Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Monday. It is February the 17th, and that makes it President's Day. So happy birthday to presidents, and what a great time to celebrate presidents in 2025. We've got one again, finally. It is kind of a shocking sort of thing to see how wildly different things were for the last 4 years, with Joe Biden not even being sentient, with him not being able to sit behind the desk. And yeah, we are rolling right into it, even though it may be a federal holiday. I have that Fed legacy, but I don't act like a Fed anymore. Not in a long time. We're going to be going to work today. We're going to be working for you. We got a lot to cover. We're going to cover down on some of the things that are going on overseas and what they mean for those of us that are over here. JD Vance was dispatched to go and talk with folks in Germany. He spoke to NATO. There's this discussion about what's going to happen with a Putin/Trump forum. They're going to get together and talk about Ukraine. And for whatever reason, the talking points must have been marched out that this is what fascism looks like. This is how you have to be. You cannot have people in a country listened to if they don't have the appropriate opinions. The talking points have been marched out by the so-called Mockingbird media. We're watching CBS do one of the funniest things you've ever seen. They are simultaneously saying that without free speech, you get the Holocaust. And also, they are going to support the idea that you must suppress hate speech. The First Amendment and the Second Amendment in this country may be two of the most important things that have ever been put down in writing when it comes to allowing a free population to remain free. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that and some more. I also have probably the best single example of government weakness, failure, the things that we expect when we see government. It's all right there in one story. We're going to lead off with NPR, funded by the government, right? And just how the mindset is broken. The political left not seeing the irony of what it is that they do. So we're going to get into all of those things. Before we do, let's talk about preparedness, because one of the ways that you remain out of the government's purview is by keeping yourself prepared. You guys can go to preparelikekyle.com. The question is how well do you sleep at night in general? I generally don't sleep very well anyway, but real peace of mind does come from knowing that your family is prepared for anything, whether it be from firearms to food, water filtration, and so on. My Patriot Supply is America's most trusted name in emergency preparedness. They're offering a limited time discount right now on the 3-month emergency food kit. That is the one that Mrs. Seraphin and I have 2 of them stashed in a closet. It's not a typical survival food. Each kit is going to come with 2,000 calories. It's going to give you 100% of the recommended value for 12 different vitamins and minerals. It's 90 days of food. It's got meals and extras, including beef and chicken and fruits and vegetables, talking about quality products that will last for up to 25 years in storage. Still tastes like you're not eating the same thing over and over again. Survival foods that don't have to taste like survival. If the pandemic taught us anything, it's literally how quickly those shelves can be emptied. You just walk in and they're gone. Don't wait for a crisis. Your 3-month emergency food kit includes free shipping. And it is has a disaster replacement warranty, 24/7 US-based customer care and support. The special discount is only available for a limited time. Again, it's preparelikekyle.com. Throw it back up here on the screen for you. There it is. Maybe not. Maybe it disappeared forever. If you order by 3 p.m. today, they're going to ship your order within the first day. So if you can order it today, you will have it shipped out today. Peace of mind right now. Go to preparelikekyle.com. Look for the links in the show description. If you ever forget any of our sponsors, that's where you find them. Let's dive into some of this stuff. Like I said, this first story is going to be kind of funny. Sometimes they give it to you all at once. Sometimes they just load it up and they say, what if we gave you all the things you were looking for in a single example? This is NPR. This is one of their lead headlines popping up. It started that they posted this morning at 5 a.m. A former NASA scientist, read NASA equals government employee. A former NASA scientist has big dreams for his small business. Will Trump dash them? Now you're going to think, what on earth does a NASA scientist who now wants to start a small business, he's gone into the private sector, have to do with what Donald Trump is doing? Is it because Donald Trump's tariffs are going to destroy his business plan? Is it because Donald Trump is creating negative tax incentives that are going to make it impossible for small businesses to operate? Is it going to be something that the federal government does to come down and quash the little guy, favoring maybe a larger corporation? No. I'm just going to read this to you. On January 13th, Ryan Dowdy was thrilled to learn that he won a prestigious grant. From the United States Department of Agriculture. The USDA's Small Business Innovation Research Program appeared to be a perfect fit for Dowdy's fledgling business known as Ready Bar. The former NASA scientist, who managed the food system on the International Space Station between 2018 and 2021, Dowd wanted to apply technology used in space to help people on Earth who work in similar high-stress environments. And he developed a meal replacement bar for first responders, whose nutritional demands he figured were similar to those of astronauts. And so he planned to use the USDA grant to improve the bar's flavor and texture and ensure a 2-year shelf life. Are you guys getting kind of how funny this is? So government employee decides to take the skills, the knowledge that he learned and step into the private sector. And the only way that he's going to be able to accomplish this dream and goal of starting his own business and getting off the government teat is to jump onto the government teat in the form of a USDA grant. And that may go away. Isn't that the opposite of what small businesses are supposed to do? And isn't it the opposite of what an entrepreneurial attitude is? If your idea is so good, why does it not stand on its own? If it is useful enough to be able to have a market, if there's a group of people that are willing to pay for it, if the market will actually demand or will support this product, then why does it need a government grant? 2 weeks after receiving the news of his proposal that it was meritorious, the Donald Trump administration ordered a pause on all federal financial assistance to include grants. Grants are just money that we give away. We just give them away. Why? Because it is so important that you start your small business with a leg up from the federal government after being a federal employee and capitalizing on your federal experience. It leads me to believe that people who work in government do not see any other solutions because they don't know any other way. My wife and I had this interesting conversation over the weekend because we've been talking about lawsuits that we're filing against the federal government. We've been advised, me, Garrett O'Boyle, Steve Friend, a number of other suspendables, George Hill and so on, Phil Kennedy. We've been talking about pushing for accountability against the DOJ for what they did. And there's other whistleblowers whose names you don't know, but who brought credible allegations of malfeasance and violations of rule, policy, or law in accordance with the federal statute, and were absolutely crushed. More on whistleblowers in a minute, because it's actually kind of funny. Now the left suddenly cares about them. We've been talking about filing these lawsuits. And it occurred to me that when I was removed from my federal job, I'm just going to give you a one guy's experience, because I didn't spend most of my time working as a federal employee. Most of my life was not a federal employee. Even if you count in my military service time, it still is about 65% private experience versus public sector. And so when I lost my job with the FBI, I didn't even consider going to get government assistance. The second thing is that I would have to actually say that the government took my job, my paycheck, and that I needed to go get unemployment. I didn't go get unemployment. You guys may not know this, but I didn't collect any unemployment despite the fact that I lost my paycheck for 14 months. So no government assistance. It didn't even occur to me. My mindset was, how do I go out there and start something up? How do I figure out what the next move is? This guy left his job at NASA. You'd think that NASA would be a pretty good door opener if you were to say, I ran the food program on the International Space Station for 4 years, and I have a brilliant idea about bringing a space-age technology to the market, and I think there's a place for it. If you've done the studies, if you can find somebody that there's somebody that would fund this, if the market will actually bear it. Or if it's that you want to put another thing out there called Ready Bar, if you want to put another power bar, energy bar, meal replacement bar, of which there are hundreds, go to Whole Foods, walk around and just look. There is no shortage of these things. Nobody cares So your brilliant idea only exists with the government funding. You need to have a federal government, USDA, and how did he end up being the guy that was the best choice for that? Was there not some other private corporation that didn't have a government affiliation? His only thought was to go get government money in order to get this thing done. Well, I won't say only thought. I don't know the guy. But if that's what you're going to highlight, and by the way, the fact that it's written by NPR, that's where this story is, it's everything all wrapped up in one. It never occurred to me to even go get federal subsidies or to go get an unemployment check. I no longer worked there. It was time to go find the next thing, and I was too busy. And the second thing was, which is the ugliest part of it, I guess, is that if I had gone and done that, the FBI would have said, no, you're still an employee. You're just not an employee who's getting paid. This is the scenario that my friend Garrett O'Boyle is in right now. And the reason why I am so fixated on this is because over the weekend, I saw a video clip, which I wasn't sure I was going to lead with, but I actually am going to. The video clip shows a 60-minute propaganda piece by one of my least favorite voices in the mainstream media. I know some of you despise these women that go out there and they're very smug and they have their nice makeup and they have all these nasty things to say and they talk poorly about Donald Trump when he's out there. They're just awful. They're awful presenters of information. These people are nothing compared to the smug and shitty face of Scott Pelley, who sits and plays with his glasses. My favorite is when he's chewing on his glasses, and he talks like this, because that is how people know what a serious and important journalist he is. I cannot make fun of this guy enough. It's suddenly a problem that people lost their jobs and they don't know how they're going to feed their families. Let me find this clip right here. People are scared of what they're going to do next. It's been 12 days. Allow me to remind you that when my story went public and I first spoke with Dan Bongino in September of 2022, I had been unpaid for June, July, August, and September. So four months there, plus December, January, February, and the first week of March before that. So 8 or 9 months without a paycheck. And it wasn't me crying about it. I was talking about the problems that we brought forward. This woman is out now crying for federal employees. She's been a speechwriter for 15 years. Her skill set is writing speeches for Samantha Powers most recently. I don't even know how you can go out there and say this with a straight face. And by the way, this will be the first of 2 interview panels where the female dominates the male when it comes to talking about the problem. So I just want you to be aware that if you're listening to this, there's a man sitting there as well, and he's called out by name, but he doesn't have anything to say in this particular clip. He looks like he gets dominated by it. Crying for USAID speechwriters and others who now don't know what to do, and they haven't even lost their paycheck yet. All right, that's where we're starting.
People are really scared. I think that, 12 days ago, people knew where their next paycheck was coming from. They knew how they were going to pay for their kids' daycare, their medical bills, and then all gone overnight.
All gone overnight for Christina Dry and Adam Dubard, fired this month in the chaotic shutdown of foreign aid distributed by the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID. More than 8,000 USAID employees were sent home by the administration.
They're not looking for competency. They're not looking for if you're good at your job. They're looking for pure loyalty tests. And if you don't give it, you will be punished.
And they had to leave the building. And these are folks who had decades and decades of public service serving USAID across administrations, from, George Bush to Obama to the first Trump administration. And they were never able to walk back in the building again.
There was no process? No one explained to them why they were being relieved?
To my knowledge, they received an email, and then if they didn't leave the building, they were escorted out of the building.
Yeah, no, there was a process. The process is do you have any value that you provide to the American people? If not, we are not going to keep you. That's what DOGE has been all about. It's really straightforward. Did you notice the way that those words kind of leaked out? She said they had decades of loyal experience to USAID. That's where it really becomes a problem. If you think that your loyalty belongs with the institution that you get a paycheck from, You are the problem. You're it. How do you not know that? USAID is not the American taxpayer that actually pays for it. It's just an organization that happens to be the place that you show up for work. It's the same thing as saying, decades of loyal service to the FBI or decades of loyal service to the United States military. You don't serve the United States military. Who writes your check? The American taxpayer. Your service needs to be to the Constitution. It needs to be to the country that you serve, that pays you. It's incidental that you happen to report to a specific building if you actually understand what the oath of office for a civil servant is. And most of these people do not have that understanding. They believe that the place they show up is what is important. And that's how you end up with missions that are completely detached from the reason that the organization is set up. Most people in government think that their job is to do the job that they're assigned, but they don't understand that it's part of a larger mission. And if you no longer are serving that mission, what is your purpose? Why are you here? Why do we have to pay you? I just also would just hazard this question. Why on earth do we have speechwriters that are on staff for these people? Like, can they not write their own stuff? I don't get that part either. I wanted to show you guys this graph, which comes from the World Economic Forum. So I'm going to go ahead and try to resize it real quick on the fly. I think I can get that done. Look at this. We got skills here. Check this out. This is quite interesting. According to the World Economic Forum, the thing that lefties love to go out there and push, we should be asking, are these people in jobs that matter? And what do I mean by matter? I mean, are they in growing or declining job fields? The fastest declining job fields are clerks and bank tellers. Number one, postal service clerks. Okay. Cashiers and ticket clerks. You notice the word clerks appears a lot. Data entry clerks, administrative and executive secretaries. A lot of the stuff can be replaced by either AI or people are doing it themselves because the job skills of the folks coming in are not high. Material records and stock keeping clerks, accounting, bookkeeping, and payroll clerks. Legislators and officials, statistical, finance, and insurance clerks. And then lastly, it's door-to-door sales, news, vendors, blah, 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 related workers. That's kind of not part of it. Isn't this kind of the basis for the learn to code bit that we were hearing about? That people ought to learn how to do something that is of value to, the place that they work for? Learn to code is kind of a nasty way of saying it. But at the end of the day, if you are doing clerical work, which is the bulk of a lot of government service, it just is not all that useful. It can be easily replaced. They had loyal years of service, but they are no longer required. The idea that you would be entitled, and that's the word we're looking for, entitled to a paycheck simply because you've always gotten it is crazy. And so there's this huge cover. Let's play a little piece here. These are the folks. The question is if they have a skill set that is of value, then it doesn't matter whether the government fires them. They'll go out and find something else. But if they just have a skill set of making a ready bar, like our guy from NPR, where nobody really wants the product, the only way that's going to get funded is if you find more government to be able to pay for the thing that you learn how to do while working for the government. This is a little local news story talking about the fallout of people getting fired from the Department of Education, which I don't know why we have it in the first place, because the federal government runs 0 schools as far as I can tell, and probably shouldn't be involved in any of them anyway. This is what Trump campaigned on. He literally said, we are going to shut down some of these government departments. And people went yup, I'm in for that. Now the crying is it's not surprising, but it is exactly what people in America voted for. And this is why people in Germany are upset right now, too. They're not listening to their own population, and it's going to have some disastrous results. You're going to lean people into extremism, according to the left, when it's really going to just be common sensism.
Federal workforce fallout right now. Hundreds of federal workers in our area are finding out they no longer have jobs. This is all happening less than 24 hours after the Trump administration's deferred resignation offer expired.
Our Lionel Donovan joins us now from the Department of Education tonight with more on how many people are impacted. And Lionel, I know you've been working your sources to get to those latest numbers. So what are you hearing?
That's right, Leslie. Today, the Federal Workers Union, the American Federation of Government Employees, sent me 2 termination notices, one from the Small Business Administration and the other from the Department of Education that have gone out to dozens of workers. Now, as these workers are trying to get over the shock of all these changes, some in the community are trying to rally behind the federal workforce. 100 probationary employees at the U.S. Department of Education and the Small Business Administration were told in termination notices they were, quote, not fit for employment based on the agency's needs, end quote. This comes less than 24 hours after the Trump administration closed down its deferred resignation program Wednesday night. The White House says around 75,000 federal workers accepted that offer. Now people across the DMV ask, what's next for the growing pool of unemployed federal workers? Montgomery County Executive Mark Elrich says keeping former federal workers in the county is a priority, but not without its challenges.
One of the challenging things is going to be getting jobs that match the skill levels of the people who are retiring from the federal government or the specialty areas that they have. So you not only have to find the jobs are going to have to fit.
Yeah, you're going to have to be able to find people to do jobs that actually work. No, what he just said is the exact opposite, but that is the mentality of government. It's not just that these people have specialized experience, it's that nobody wants the damn specialized experience. So, like, how are we going to find them jobs? How about they find the jobs that make sense, like most of you had? You know what I also didn't see? And this one is what really, really chaps my ass, and I don't know how else to say it. Did you ever see anything like this on mainstream television? That was WUSA 9. So that's, I think, the NBC affiliate that's in the Washington, D.C. area, local television. Did you see any crying when people were losing their job over the vaccine mandates? Honest question. Please put it in the comments if you did. If you saw local news, if you saw national news going out and covering the story, and I missed a clip somewhere, I would love to see it. How many people lost their jobs because of a vaccine mandate? And nobody gave two flying flips about it. Not one person. I don't remember a single friendly piece of coverage, not even from like the Fox News types, because they were in on it too. They had their own version of it. Our friends like Brianna Morello, they were also removed from this. So, paranoia. This is CNN's lead story for today. Paranoia seeps into the federal workforce, who's worried about being fired and being watched. This is my other favorite part. All right, so this is kind of funny. This is like a half-ass ad for my friends over at Silent. Their bag's on my wall behind me. I actually just put my phone in the Faraday bag before we got started here. So the Trump administration fires thousands of employees across the government. The federal workers have another reason to be on edge. Widespread access that Elon Musk, the government efficiency team, has gained to agency computers. This is the stupidest thing that I've ever heard. Do you have any idea how much information you have ceded to private corporations, including things like, I don't know, PayPal, that Elon Musk was a part of? How dumb are we right now that we're hearing about this? And these people have zero inquisitive minds to think like, oh, what information does Twitter have about you? It's far more than the federal government does. I can guarantee you that. Based on the speed that you type, the frequency that you're posting, the things that you're interested in, they know so much more about what's going on with you. X knows more about you. Truth Social knows more about you. PayPal, your bank, all the different companies that are out there that are collecting your data, they have your cell phone providers. They all know more than the federal government does. But now we're just going to use it because it's a good thing to get scary about. The sudden appearance of DOGE representatives across agencies in Washington and the Trump administration searching for federal employees, it deems disloyal. There's never been a claim on that. It's just the fact that they don't have any function. That's the whole point. DOGE was about efficiency. It's not about loyalty tests. There's entire agencies that just don't have a purpose. And if you can't have a purpose, if you don't serve the American taxpayer, why do we pay for you? It's a simple question that most people are asking. I don't think it's out of line. The craziest thing is that the lefties don't think that that's actually what was being voted on. Like they didn't understand the terms of the election in November, apparently. I saw this video. There's this guy named Bobby something or other, and he's the guy that's in here that responds to her. He's hilarious. He actually falls into this sort of like Gen X category of people that just have common sense. And there's this like strange breed of lefty female that wants to go out and lecture like you're getting what you asked for. Yeah, we know. That's what we want. We want government employees like trying to figure out what their next job's going to be and how they're going to be able to find a place in the market. Because government is not a market. I just think it's funny because it says in here, some of them have even gone so far as to buy special Faraday bags designed to block electromagnetic fields. That's what all Faraday bags do. These people It's so amazing that you can be a writer at CNN and not know. You can write about a Faraday bag and not know what a Faraday bag is. By the way, this is the one that I'm using right now. So there you go. Like I said, plug for our friends at Silent. Use KYLE over there, save 15%. I'll just toss that in there. They're probably better than whatever these people are buying on Amazon. Let me play this like lefty lady who's going to go out there and mock the people who are literally getting the thing that they want. We all were hoping that this would come down. That's why we're cheering this.
70 million people voted for this. I voted for this.
Sure did.
But you didn't.
We did, though.
You didn't vote for Project 2025, and you didn't vote for DOGE.
We literally did, though.
She lied to you. And listen, I'd be pissed.
He didn't, though. And why are you talking like that? It's very theater, kid. Stop doing that. We see you. You're close to the camera. Stop, though. The production value on this video to just squeal smarmy thing.
If my husband said he was going to clean the house and instead he bombed the house, wouldn't that make you mad?
Oh my God, the over-enunciations and exaggerated...
I just love this guy. I'm going to start promoting all of his content. I'm going to start throwing it up. I'm going to be like a retweet station for him over on X because the stuff he says is exactly the way that it sounds in my head when I see these videos. Probably most of you as well, because you have common sense, because you're just like a regular person who sees overacted nonsense. She has that same vibe of the fake Mary Poppins that was singing about censorship. They all kind of have that same look, don't they? And they all actually seem to have that sort of same, like, school hall monitor marm, like, oh, you're not supposed to be here. It's the same thing that even people on the left used to hate. Louis C.K. got in trouble for calling this stuff out. It's like fingernails across your brain. In any case, that's how they sound in my head. And I love that there's a guy that's out there like responding to them in the same way. We're going to get way deep into this because it's not just these women. It's also people that are on the political left in the in elected positions. We've got Senator Chris Coons talking about it. And then, of course, like I said, a 100% full court push coming in from CBS, Scott Pelley, and all the others that are sitting over at 60 Minutes. They can't even see the irony of the positions that they're holding, don't even agree with their own position. I used to joke that being a leftist in America at this point in time, with all the information that's available to you, all of the historical context and so on, it has to be like waking up with a migraine. Because the ideas that you have don't agree with your own ideas, and they must smash into each other at full speed and just cause like cosmic ripples inside your brain that should give you a walking migraine at all times. Or you're too dim to even process that they don't agree. I think that you just can't ask questions about your own ideas. They have to all be siloed in little rooms so they don't get along, but that doesn't bother you. And that's really, really a confusing way to live. It's why they lose all the arguments. It's why these things like Jubilee, where you see guys like Michael Knowles going out and destroying, it's all the destroy the libs. I don't see those on the other side, and I do watch both sides. I don't see people posting like destructions of people that are just talking on the right, because most of the ideas, they're not that radical. In fact, they're ideas that people on the left agreed with like 20, 30 years ago. They've come so far in my adult lifetime that they can no longer agree with their own ideas. And that to me is actually fairly staggering. There's no other way around it. It's crazy. All right. And one of the things they took from us is the ability to just make our own decisions. This is something that was being pushed for a long time. So we're going to go ahead and pivot over and say thanks to the folks at the Wellness Company. One of the ways that you can actually take control of your own life. I always tell people no one likes being sick. Obviously, the one thing that feels worse than being sick is having to make decisions when you're sick, having to figure out to go somewhere to get go to a doctor or go to get a prescription. If you're an adult and you've been sick before, you know what it's like. You can go to twc.health/Kyle and you can limit one of the worst things about feeling crappy, which is having to go out on errands and get yourself squared away. I would much rather use that valuable time when I'm going to take time away to get better and to rest and not running out on errands and standing in pharmacy lines or waiting rooms or getting the we'll text you when your name comes over the speaker or whatever it is, like because your prescription is ready now. Because the prescription can be ready right now. It can be at your house. You can prepare and not have to repair, especially when you're sick. It's totally worth your time. Medical emergency kits are available at twc.health/Kyle. It's the first thing you'll see when you land there. It's a kit that has life-saving medications, things like ivermectin, a Z-Pak, amoxicillin. You can have them in your home. You can check out the Contagion Emergency Kit. It's the black one. It's going to have ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, which is that Z-Pak. You can get a generic Tamiflu, and you can even get a nebulizer to help open up your airway. Every one of these things includes a guidebook, so you'll know how to use them, the indications, the contraindications, and what normal use looks like. You just complete a 2-minute survey after checkout, and you'll be able to finish your order that way. They'll ship it to you straight away. It's 1 to 2 weeks, USA only. Again, twc.health/Kyle. doge.health/Kyle is the way to go do that. Take control of your own stuff. Like, don't leave it to some sort of smarmy person. A hospital administrator, somebody who's out of work because they're a clerk of some kind and no longer have a function. Okay, again, like I said, it's not just the men, it's also the women. Here is a feminized version. Again, it's Scott Pelley. This 60 Minutes is like the most rich mine to be able to dig out of because it's all bad. I've seen every clip that has been pushed out onto the web over the last couple of days, and it's all stupid. We're going to get to JD Vance in just a second because that's the other thing they're crying.
Do you believe you have a sense of what DOGE is doing?
No, I think DOGE is an unelected, unofficial, small group of young tech bros who are charging into different federal agencies, getting into their core computer systems, doing things with them that at least I don't know the full details of, copying and downloading reams of data.
What does it matter that DOGE has access to U.S. government computer systems?
What matters is that the U.S. government has information about you, about me, our Social Security information, our Medicare, Medicaid, veterans benefit payments, things that matter to us, obviously our tax filings. And if they have access to it and control it, they can change it.
My buttons got all screwed up. What in the world is he talking about? Like I said, the amount of privacy that Americans give up under terms of service every time you opt in or pick something up is shocking. Because of the speed at which you text, your phone company can guess your relative amount of education. They can see what sort of words you use, so they understand the depth of your vocabulary. They can understand pretty close to an IQ based on speed of response, the sentence structure, the complexity of the thoughts that you're conveying. Do you guys have any idea how scary some of this stuff is? And that's all in the private sector. And then you have the government, which we showed you, can only retire 10,000 people a month because they keep everything over in Iron Mountain, because it goes into a limestone vault that is filed on physical paper. What they're cleaning up is how stupid and inefficient and non-mission focused the federal government is. So that's why I guess it's funny when I see things like this. First of all, that's a really funny picture of Hakeem Jeffries. He's crying about the toxic bait and switch presidency, the same thing we just heard that leftist woman say. This is ABC News. It says the House Minority Leader is claiming that they have broke their promises. How many of you feel like your promises that you felt over the campaign have now been broken? Are they broken now? Did anyone mislead you about what a Trump presidency? If anything, we're actually flippin' shocked that promises are being kept, that government agencies that have always existed, in the last 50 years are now being questioned for efficiency, that the dollars that are being spent are being accounted for. And people are going, oh, well, that doesn't seem like a thing that I would want to spend my money on. Who knew that the whole point is that USAID is now come into focus, and people are like, he didn't campaign on that. He's like, no, he just campaigned on efficiency. And it turns out that USAID is a place where $40 billion goes. You know what the claim back on that is? We're only talking about 1% of the federal government. It's only 1% of the federal budget, people. Why are you crying about 1%? Imagine if somebody wanted, we had a revolution in this country over a 2% tax. They have no historical context. It's the same thing as I see a lady from the Washington Post earlier today who was crying about the idea that the SAVE Act would eliminate the ability of women to vote. 69 million women won't be able to vote. First of all, from her mouth to God's ears. But honestly, the idea that 69 million women would not be able to vote, her entire proof is that you have to be able to show proof of residency, proof of citizenship, and that your name and your ID have to match the name and ID that you register on your vote. She's actually talking about women, which is now a smaller and smaller number of women who get married and change their name to their husbands. My wife did it. It was a pain in the ass. For all of you women out there who have ever changed your last name because you got married, it's not very cool. It actually sucks, I think. You have to get a new driver's license. You got to get a new passport. You got to go update your insurance. You got to get your new billing. You probably got to get a new email address, like all the stuff that's out there. Okay. So that's a really inconvenient couple days for you. The trade-off is that you got married, so you chose that, and you actually chose to change your name because it's not required. So what the hell is she talking about? It's just living in this fantasy world. In the same way, these people, again, Scott Pelley, this is classic, because USAID employs a bunch of accountants and auditors, there's no way that they could have any fraud based on the just trust me bro model because they had all these people. If you want to know who are the worst accountants and the least capable, they're not working for the federal government. Like, the people that do that job really well are working for the big 5 accounting firms, and they're making much better paychecks than the government pays them. Hands down. Or they've created a new innovation, a technology, or a service that the American public is going to go, oh, that's monetizable. I'm willing to pay for it. If you're not good at it, you probably work for the federal government. That doesn't mean that if you're listening to this and you're an accountant, I think you suck. I don't know. But I'm just going to say, as a default position, having worked with government employees at every level, they're very rarely the best of the best, the most brilliant of their kind. And they're almost always disincentivized, because if you're a high performer in government, you're crapped on. You are a threat to the bureaucracy. If you are the most efficient at your job and you work for the government, the odds are you're not going to work for the government pretty soon. This argument is hilarious, but it is being carried by CBS. So regular people, a lot of like whatever the leftist boomer version is, the center left people in the boomer crowd that are watching 60 Minutes and thinking like, oh, this is exactly how the world is. They're looking for a Walter Cronkite solution. Here it is. The argument is they have a lot of accountants, so they couldn't be wasting money. You tell me if this rings true for you.
About USAID, President Trump has said, quote, billions of dollars have been stolen. The whole thing is a fraud.
It's utter nonsense. The most accountable aid agency in the world is USAID. I've written actually widely on this subject. 40% of the staff are accountants and lawyers and people trying to make sure no money is stolen. We've created systems to monitor that. What they did was they went back 20 years to try to find things. If you have to go back 20 years to find abuse, that means there isn't that much abuse.
USAID spending in 2023 was $38 billion. That's less than 1% of the federal budget. Natsios told us there is waste and occasional fraud like any big agency. Think of the Pentagon. But the money, he says, is watched by officials, including those in the OMB, the Office of Management and Budget.
The question is, why did the Congress approve all these contracts and grants and programs all these years? Why did OMB approve them? Why did the State Department, the F office controls all foreign aid spending. Every line item in the USAID budget is approved by 3 different bodies. The F office, OMB, and the Congressional Oversight Committees, of which there are 4.
None of that is a cogent argument, because what you're saying is that it's credentialism. You're making an argument to the authority of the government. It's like, look, they approved it. It's like, okay, so you're trying to say that we don't think that there's corruption in the politicians or in the bureaucratic process? This guy either has never worked for government and seen the amount of laziness. The status quo is the goal. And that's why it's very rich when you see this story, which comes from CBS as well. The Trump administration wants the Supreme Court to permit the firing of whistleblower agency head. And the claim is that this guy, and I got to get his name here because it's not someone I hear from regularly. His last name is Dellinger. Let me see what his first name is here. Just give me a moment. The claim is that this character is being fired. Hampton Dellinger. That's why I couldn't find it, because his first name looks like a last name. His name is Hampton Dellinger, and he is in charge of the Special Counsel of the United States. He's part of the U.S. Office of the Special Counsel. They want to fire him because he was appointed to basically protect whistleblowers. The claim is that now whistleblowers are suddenly exposed. Again, where were you people, the ones crying for federal workers losing their jobs? Where the hell were you people when the COVID vaccine mandates came out and folks started whistleblowing against the Biden administration, showing that there were all kinds of illegal, immoral, or unethical actions that were happening, and nothing was done about it? It's because this is a partisanship experience. The case began last week when Dellinger sued for his removal as the head of the Office of Special Counsel, which, this is rich, was responsible for, quote, guarding the federal workforce from illegal personnel actions, such as retaliation for whistleblowing. I have never even heard of this crew, and nobody ever cared. When you bring it to the offices that are inside the agencies you work for, their entire goal is to squash you. There is a concerted effort. This is why I'm going to end up with more than one lawsuit in this space. A concerted effort to stop people from exposing malfeasance. The government doesn't want to have a transparent situation or open books to be able to evaluate whether or not they did the good job. Everything about them is performative. Its entire process is meant to maintain status quo. That's why you have a bunch of accountants and bureaucrats and a bunch of clerks. You know, the thing that the WEF said is not something that is very useful. Those people are not keeping the government accountable. They're just keeping the government on the same footing. They are rubber stamping and moving things along. It's so crazy to me that anybody would make these defenses, but they did. We're going to get into the free speech piece of this in a second. How about last little piece on DOGE? This came from Bill Maher. I think this is really relevant. This is what inefficiency looks like. Does it mean that it's illegal spending? Probably not. It's just not the way that you would spend your own money. Imagine him talking. He's talking about a toilet right now in San Francisco, which he refers to as the poop capital of America. I think it is. I think it probably is. This is the insanity that if a project costs $1.7 million and someone's willing to donate the cost of creating it, it still costs $1.2 million. Just wrap your head around this. I'm sure this is true. This is exactly how government works at both the state and the federal level.
San Francisco, which is unfortunately the poop capital of the world, wanted to build a single public outdoor toilet. The bid came in at $1.7 million for a toilet, and it would take 3 years to build. Then a company came along and said, you know what, we're going to donate it and pay for the installation. So donation of the thing itself and installation, oh, there you saved $1.7 million. This is the problem I have with government. The cost, said I think San Francisco Chronicle, isn't the project, it's project management.
Yeah.
In other words, it would still cost $1.2 million, even though the thing itself and the installation was free. Why? Construction management, engineering fees, permits, civic design review, surveys, contract preparation, cost estimate. This is the bullshit.
Yeah, actually,
that sucks all the money out of America.
This is how you end up red pilling people. You just have them exposed to the simple facts that their ideas, although they might be really great in their head and they might have some really good sympathetic ideas underneath them, that there's empathy, that there's compassion, that there is some virtue associated with the things that they want to do. And then you make them face the hard reality that in reality, it doesn't actually work that way, that your theoretical construct cannot be moved into reality. It's like, well, in theory, it would work, but in reality, it's never worked. And the evidence is all of human history. Governments are inefficient. What's funny is that they're crying about DOGE a lot still, and it's going to be an ongoing thing for at least the next 6 months, as far as I can tell. You're not going to stop hearing the end of this. This is a Fox News little kind of comedy piece, I guess, from Gutfeld. And I think it makes perfect sense. Here's Kat Timpf talking about a cheating man. And if you want to go ahead and distract from the real issue, then you're never going to get the reality of this. You're never going to get to the problem because they don't want to talk about the actual problem. They want to talk about the way that you're handling the problem. And this is why we're not having an honest conversation about it. Imagine if people were just like, oh, okay, well, I'm willing to concede that you've wasted a bunch of our money. They can't do that, because then they have to actually take on the fact that they have some responsibility for it.
Look, it's what I think it would be one thing to maybe criticize Elon Musk or criticize DOGE, but to only do that and criticize the way in which maybe Elon talks about the fraud or uncovers the fraud and the waste, and not the waste and fraud itself, reminds me of the guy where if you confront him about you're cheating on me, here's the evidence, and he goes, you went through my phone. How am I supposed to be with you if you can't trust me?
That is so true.
It cannot get more true than that. We're not going to talk about the thing that's actually wrong, because what I want to do is distract you with the mechanism by which you brought it to my attention. I don't like the fact that Elon Musk might have some information about me. Ignore the fact that he did have access to it and he owns like one of the biggest tech platforms in the world with hundreds of millions of users. Ignore that part. Let's just talk about the thing that I don't like, which is that he's going in and cutting my pet projects. And how am I supposed to be able to trust you? It's like you already do. You already put X on your phone. You already have Reddit on your phone. You already have Facebook on your phone. You've given access to everybody. And now you're worried that somebody's going to be able to look at it from another angle, which is going to be way less efficient and probably just going to prove that they don't actually have all the skills and the things that you think. Look, there are highly competent little cells within the federal government. There are places in the NSA where they can do high-level analytical things and pinpoint down to a gnat's ass what's going on. And then there's the IRS, which screws it up. Then there's the USDA. Then there's guys writing checks for dudes for a new meal replacement bar. Why? Steve Kirch got it just right. It's kind of like the law of contrary popular opinion. He actually kind of nails it down a little bit more, a little more aggressively. That he does it under oath in front of Congress, doing a hearing. Steve Kirch was talking, he was big on the vaccine problems. But what he's saying is if you can't get good experts to recommend things, you can simply set your watch to the opposite of what the people who say the dumbest things are. And that's actually not bad advice. So enjoy this little bit, and then we're going to get into why free speech is so important.
So if you have the right advice, if you have the right people giving you advice, that is the most important thing, is to pick the right individuals. And the people on Senator Johnson's panel would be delighted to go and advise a state on here's what you guys should be doing. Now, if you don't have that advice, then the best advice in lieu of that is just to listen to what the CDC says and do the opposite. And you will be far, far better off. That is probably the best medical advice that I could give you to save your life. When they say don't go for early treatments, they don't work. That ivermectin doesn't work, you know what you should do. When they say hydroxychloroquine doesn't work, you know what you should do. When they say masks work, you know that masks do nothing. You know, virtually every single thing the CDC tells you, if you did the opposite, you would be far better off, and you would be then, you know, the state of the art in the best medical treatment. But
he goes further. It's real simple. If they tell you that white supremacy is the biggest danger, or that people on the far right are threatening your democracy, then that's the opposite of what's happening. And we're going to have some examples of this. All of this spun from an article that I found from Reuters this morning. This was updated over the weekend. It says, Vance attack on Europe overshadows Ukraine talks at security conference. There's so much involved in this. Remember, Reuters is supposed to be a nonpartisan, down-the-middle news service, a wire service that just tells you the facts and then editorials can be added on top of it. They're not going to shade the news. And the word is that he attacks Europe. Well, I mean, did he fly in there with like some sort of troops? Did they do an invasion? Did they go out there and do something violent? No. Because the political left has already ceded so much ground on language to the hard and radical left. They've now taken on the idea that standing there in Europe and saying things that are not real crazy, like you should listen to your people and they're not really that dangerous. Like a good group would actually do that. A good set of leaders would trust that their people might have something to say, even if they don't like what they have to say. That's considered an attack on Europe, which, by the way, is a continent. And yes, they do have a political affiliation, but aren't there a bunch of individual countries there that are just fed up and sick of this crap? There's a reason why opposition parties exist, and there's another reason why they're getting squashed at the highest possible level, at the continental level in the EU. So we're going to play a little side-by-side. This is Olaf Scholz, he's the German chancellor, and J.D. Vance, the American vice president, in a head-to-head. I'm going to play you about 90 seconds of this speech going back to back. And you tell me who sounds reasonable. The guy who says that we're not going to tolerate, we're not going to have a conversation with, we're not going to even meet or even acknowledge the existence of one group, or the guy that says, hey, maybe you should listen to your citizens because they're saying something to you and it seems important. They all should have been paying attention in November what the American people said, because a lot of people, reasonable people, just said, guys, I may not even like everything you're about. I may not like Donald Trump as a person, but what I do know is that sanity has to return if we're going to exist.
We really reject any idea of cooperation between parties, other parties, and these extreme right parties. I think there is a strong consensus between all relevant parties in Germany that they won't do so. I hope this will last and continue. But it is absolutely sure and necessary to say it is not others to give us the advice to cooperate with these parties which we are not working with for good reasons, especially when looking to the history of our country.
All of the good reasons.
In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat. There is no security if you are afraid of the voices, the opinions, and the conscience that guide your very own people. If you're running in fear of your own voters, there is nothing America can do for you. nor for that matter is there anything that you can do for the American people who elected me and elected President Trump. But there is so much of value that can be accomplished with the kind of democratic mandate that I think will come from being more responsive to the voices of your citizens. You cannot win a democratic mandate by censoring your opponents or putting them in jail. Whether that's the leader of the opposition, a humble Christian praying in her own home, or a journalist trying to report the news.
In theory, this would be something that the liberals would actually agree with. One would think. In fact, there should be some liberals that go, oh, that sounds inherently and importantly down the middle. This is a common position of liberals for the last 100 years, is that the freedom of speech is incredibly important, that we should defend the rights of people that don't even agree with us because we have to have open discourse. We have to have a dialogue if we want to understand each other. All this stuff is really simple. And in the meantime, like I said, again, it's CBS. CBS is the one that is carrying water right now. And it's wild to watch this. J.D. Vance is exporting hate and drama and danger, and he's talking about the enemy within. He is trying to get Europe on the MAGA train. What he said right there was so down the middle that it would have been the most vanilla statement by any American politician in all times except the last 10 or 12 years. Basically, since Barack Obama got into office. Prior to that time, what J.D. Vance just said would have been like a, yes, we know. What are you here to talk about? Like, that's just the default position. Crazy. Let's hear about the enemy from within. This is how dangerous J.D. Vance is. Imagine the framing of this.
Well, it sounded to a lot of these allies of the United States like they were being described as adversaries or autocrats. It was really the focus here, two things. One of them was migration, and the second was what Vice President Vance calls censorship. He was trying to bring that MAGA message of the enemy within to the global stage. And specifically, he says that European leaders aren't showing that they have strong democracies when they sideline controversial groups. He went out of his way to meet with the head of the AfD. That's a political party that's under investigation in Germany because it's so far right and for potentially conducting extremism. And
Okay, potentially conducting extremism is my favorite because that means that you are an arbiter of what is and what is not extreme. And the fact that the Overton window has shifted so far to the left means that you can define that these people are no longer allowed to be in the dialogue. He talked about two things, right? Censorship and immigration. Let's address those from headlines. This one's from ABC. 14-year-old killed, 4 others injured in knife attack in Austria. Authorities suspect that the suspect had Islamic terror motives. He was a 23-year-old Syrian. You know, like an immigrant who came in. He was also stopped by an immigrant, another Syrian who hit him with a car. Like, fair play, good job. You can have good and bad people that come into a country that come from the same place. Just before a couple days earlier, and we talked about it last week, we had someone from Afghanistan that decided to run a car into a bunch of people and injure upwards of 20, maybe as many as 30. And that person was from Afghanistan, you know, like an immigrant, someone that was not from Germany. So that's the immigration piece of it. There is clearly a problem that exists in Western Europe in the same way that it exists in America. Does it mean that they're the root of all problems? No. Does it mean that they are all of the violence? Absolutely not. Does it mean that they have no right to be there if they are going to bring this thing into a country? Yeah, I would say that they're a problem, that you can solve that problem. Eliminate people coming in that are violent and have bad ideas. Particularly things like from an Islamic culture that doesn't jibe with the Western society. Yeah, pretty straightforward. Let's talk about censorship. Have you ever considered the idea that in Germany, if you were to post a meme in the same way that we're seeing the UK do right now, the UK and Germany have both embraced Facebook terms of service in real life as law. This is one of the most shocking things I've ever seen, actually. When you look at people, and again, aggressive, masculine female talking over effeminate beta males. Is it a crime to insult somebody? Who knew?
Is it a crime to insult somebody in public?
Yes. Yes, it is.
And it's a crime to insult them online as well?
Yes.
The fine could be even higher if you insult someone in the internet.
Why?
Because in internet, it stays there. If we are talking here face to face, you insult me, I insult you, okay, finish. But if you in the internet, if I insult you or a politician,
that sticks around forever.
Yeah.
The prosecutors explain German law also prohibits the spread of malicious gossip, violent threats, and fake quotes.
If somebody posts something that's not true, and then somebody else reposts it or likes it, are they committing a crime?
Yeah, in the case of reposting, it is a crime as well, because the reader can't distinguish whether you just invented this or just reposted it. That's the same for us.
It's the same. Yeah, it's the same for us to repost it or for you to say it. So you cannot have an opinion that is outside of the normal. We don't allow it. We all agree that the insult is actually worse if you're placing it on the online, because it's on the internet and other people can now see it forever. What the shit are we talking about here? How is that possible? Again, look at the people who are doing it, look who's backing it, and then imagine, after seeing something like this on your own network, that you are going to go out there and lecture the Secretary of State and talk about the Holocaust. I'm not even kidding. This happened. This is Margaret Brennan, who apparently wants to lose to everybody at all times. She's already lost to J.D. Vance going head-to-head in a battle of wits. Now she's going to do it to Marco Rubio, who has been a politician long enough to be slippery, and he turns around and smashes her right in the face with her stupidity.
Well, he was standing in a country where free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide. And he met with the head of a political party that has far-right views and some historic ties to extreme groups. The context of that was changing the tone of it. And you know that the censorship was specifically about the right.
No, I have to disagree with you. Free speech was not used to conduct a genocide. The genocide was conducted by an authoritarian Nazi regime that happened to also be genocidal because they hated Jews and they hated minorities and they hated those that they had a list of people they hated, but primarily the Jews. There was no free speech in Nazi Germany. There was none. There was also no opposition in Nazi Germany. They were a sole and only party that governed that country. So that's not an accurate reflection of history.
She literally makes the case that free speech was weaponized because people were able to say things that were hateful. That's how you ended up with the Holocaust. That is a wild, wild take for someone on the hard left. Do we believe that that's how she actually thinks? No, we don't, because her network was covering this just a second earlier. Listen, if you're going to go out there and say that you cannot have ideas that are bad, that we're going to quash them and attack them and think that that is not Nazi-esque, like, she's siding with the Nazis. Do you know how I know? Here's a woman who's German from a group that's called Hate Aid that is trying to stop Nazi propaganda, I'm sure, online, and doing so by acting like, I shit you not, Nazis. Watch this.
The criticism that, this feels like the surveillance that Germany conducted 80 years ago. How do you respond to that?
There is no surveillance.
Josephine Ballon is a CEO of Hate Aid, a Berlin-based human rights organization that supports victims of online violence. In the United States, a lot of people look at this and say this is restricting free speech. It's a threat to democracy.
Free speech needs boundaries. And in the case of Germany, these boundaries are part of our constitution. Without boundaries, a very small group of people can rely on endless freedom to say anything that they want, while everyone else is scared and intimidated.
If you are able to say all of the things that you would like to say, then people will be able to hear the things you said. And those things could eventually make those people not agree with the official party's line. The party will not be questioned. The facts will not be in debate because we have issued the facts. The talking points are none for negotiation. And if you have any disagreements from it, we'll see you this morning.
It's 6:01 on a Tuesday morning, and we were with state police as they raided this apartment in northwest Germany.
Hier ist die Polizei, wir müssen bitte mal mit Ihnen reden.
Inside, 6 armed officers searched a suspect's home, then seized his laptop and cell phone. Prosecutors say those electronics may have been used to commit a crime. The crime, posting a racist cartoon online. At the exact same time across Germany, more than 50 similar raids played out. Part of what prosecutors say is a coordinated effort to curb online hate speech in Germany.
This is probably the scariest and stupidest thing that you can do. And they're doing it publicly, and they are acting like the people who disagree with them are the problem. That free speech is in fact the enemy. And that is the opposite of all liberal democratic societies and all Western thought that's basically been out there. If you want to talk about authoritarianism and strongman tactics, and whether it be fascism or whether it be Nazism or whether it be communism, the totalitarianism and or getting the state involved with the private companies, all of these ideas have the same root. They're at the top of Kyle's little political circle. The top is authoritarianism, totalitarianism. The bottom is complete anarchy. Reality lives either here safely, a little bit here on the more sort of liberal democratic side, or you can get on the other side here where it's a little bit more controlled and structured by faith. But there are ways to solve this problem, and they are with more freedom, not less freedom. It's truly wild. And imagine J.D. Vance going out and speaking to the leaders in Europe, and this being considered an attack. Here's what he had to say. I think I pulled this from Catholic Vote's feed. Don't be afraid of your people. This is not crazy. This is normal things that people have said for 100 years. I thought this is the reason why World War II was actually fought.
Leaders have a choice. And my strong belief is that we do not need to be afraid of the future. You can embrace what your people tell you, even when it's surprising, even when you don't agree. And if you do so, you can face the future with certainty and with confidence, knowing that the nation stands behind each of you. And that, to me, is the great magic of democracy. It's not in these stone buildings or beautiful hotels. It's not even in the great institutions that we have built together as a shared society. To believe in democracy is to understand that each of our citizens has wisdom and has a voice. And if we refuse to listen to that voice, even our most successful fights will secure very little. As Pope John Paul II, in my view, one of the most extraordinary champions of democracy on this continent or any other, once said, "Do not be afraid." We shouldn't be afraid of our people, even when they express views that disagree with their leadership. Thank you all. Good luck to all of you. God bless you.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. It's about fear. It's always about fear. It's fear that you cannot control. It's fear that ideas may get away from you. It's fear that people may disagree with you and you don't have a better argument. It keeps happening. Who knew? John Paul II may have had some flaws. I'm sure he did. But some of the things that he did were incredibly special. And the things that he delivered on this earth, you don't have to be Catholic to appreciate a lot of that. The idea that somebody could get shot by an assassin and then go and forgive them inside a prison cell not long after. That's pretty amazing stuff. That's the kind of people I think that are worth quoting. And that, my friends, was an attack. I don't want you to get too wrapped around the axle. I don't want you to worry about it too much coming out of a CBS, the mouthpieces of government propaganda. It happens on both sides. We're an equal opportunity puncher here. We'll smash the mainstream media for being stupid for what they are, because they're more than happy to issue points. And by the way, if you've listened to me and Steve Friend talk, when Fox News goes out and does this, they do the same thing. They come out and say, here's the story we'd like to run. Are you going to be able to talk to it from the angle that we would like? Do you know how I know that's true? We have lots of evidence. Let me present to you someone that most of you despise right now. Her name is Caitlin Collins. She's a host for CNN. She's a hard leftist, and she's going to hold the Trump administration to account, isn't she? She also used to be a Fox News contributor, and here she is, talking on Fox negatively about George Soros, who I'm sure she's not allowed to talk about like that anymore. These people are not news anchors, they are not reporters, and they are not journalists. They are presenters, which might more accurately be called news actors. Here's Caitlin Collins doing some news acting.
From our nation's capital. Caitlin, what does that mean? What's George Soros trying to do with the immigration crisis?
Good morning. Okay, so George Soros is this foreign-born left-wing guy who essentially wants to change the nature of our country. And in this data dump, one of the memos was about the refugee crisis. And they made 3 points. They think that they've been successful at influencing immigration policy across the world. They think that the refugee crisis is an opportunity to continue doing so. And they think the refugee crisis is the new normal. And George Soros is this guy who is a staunch advocate for open borders. He wants people to be able to go wherever they want, whenever they want, for whatever reason. And for him, he sees this immigration policy, this crisis, as a vehicle to further his immigration agenda.
Did you hear in the background? Somebody obviously ripped that from one of these multimedia sources that you're not supposed to. It's got like an audio watermark in it. It's kind of funny. I was listening to it. I'm like, wait, what did I just do? In any case, yeah, there you have it. That's Caitlin Collins. She's willing to jump to either side. No problem. Because these people are news presenters. They're not serious. They don't actually hold the positions they're standing on. And they're answering to something that's like more important to all of them. It's money. That's it. It doesn't seem like any of them have any scruples. This is why I continue to tell you, even if you tend to agree with me, you should always be skeptical. Go out there and find it yourself. If you think something sounds too good to be true, if it aligns with all of your perspectives and your ideas, yeah, there's probably a reason why. It is curated to get your attention span. So check that stuff out. Be a skeptic. Ask the questions. You can dismantle almost all of your bad ideas that way. And you should challenge them against your own principles. If you don't have those, you're going to be screwed. All right. Thanks for listening to the show today. I've got a palate cleanser for you in 1 second. I'll just remind you we're on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin and on @X, I guess on X @Kyle Seraphin. That's how you do that. The locals community is kyleseraphin.com. You guys will get our Sunday specials a little bit early if you want to do it there. And you can always find us on Spotify. Right now, if you're listening to the Sunday sit down that we did with Stuart Rose and it's bothering you because somewhere in the middle there, the stream got all screwed up and I don't know where it happened, but somehow we edited in the end in the middle, which is bizarre. The proper and fully vetted and chopped up and weirdly streamed version is always on Spotify. I can put up entire videos up there so you guys can get both the video and the audio. You can skip around in there, anything you want. Check out our Spotify page. And if you're not following us on there, if you listen other places in general, I would really appreciate it if you follow us over on Spotify, if you have the app already. And same thing, you can find us over on Apple and so on. Let's do a palate cleanse here. Most of the listeners that follow this program either are Gen X or they are a Gen X affiliate. You're a boomer that sort of has more of a punk rock attitude. We appreciate all of that. This is kind of where I associate. This is a guy kind of just pointing out some of the things. Gen Xers have woken up. They were kind of detached. They actually let boomers carry on and do a lot of the policy decisions. You're starting to see people get involved that never cared about politics before, that had their nose to the grindstone, building those businesses that were not funded by NASA or by the United States Department of Agriculture. They were out doing the work of America and not trying to get involved, and you don't have a choice anymore. This is what Gen X Awakened looks like, and maybe this is the warning to all those that didn't realize this was coming.
Gen X, these people just don't know what they've done. You've woken up Gen X. I mean, you just don't understand what you've done. Gen X, their first lesson in science was to take a magnifying glass and angle it just so the sun comes through it and torch live bugs, burn them to death. These people literally spent their childhood beating the shit out of each other just to be best friends for life after. I mean, pain doesn't exist for these people. They would play tackle football in the middle of the street on the concrete and then yell "car" when a car was coming. While kids today are eating sour candy as a challenge, Gen X literally impressed girls by putting cigarettes out on their tongue. They would literally take a lighter and heat up the metal on the top of a lighter and then turn it upside down and burn their skin just because they wanted a smiley face tattoo. I mean, you're talking about a whole generation of people that rode around in cigarette smoke-filled cars with no seatbelts, let alone airbags. These people grew up being borderline tortured. When they got in trouble, their parents would send them outside to pick a switch, a long, skinny stick that was flexible enough to cut through the air and cut flesh. If they did not pick a suitable switch, they were made to go get another one, and it just got worse. And then, if they ever hurt themselves and fell off their bike and scraped their knee or whatever, they would wear these wounds like badges of honor. And even though we hurt ourselves, we would then go inside to see our parents, and they would pour peroxide on that shit. It would bubble and sizzle and turn all red. We wore that shit like badges of honor. Gen X was wild. We would have 4th of July. We would shoot Roman candles at each other, bottle rockets and shit. While y'all are standing 30 and 40 feet back from whoever's setting the fireworks off, we were in the middle of that shit, usually turning it upside down and shooting it at our friends. I mean, Gen X has cheated death our entire lives. All we wanted to do was sleep and rest. And you goofy bastards have made it absurd enough to live on this rock that we are coming out of retirement just to burn this bitch down to spite you, and then hopefully we can go back to sleep. If not, we'll stay awake and we'll just keep the fire going, because Gen X don't quit. Y'all gonna...
don't know why that made me laugh, but all of those things can confirm for most of those. If you're younger in the audience here and you haven't heard those things before, all that's real, especially the Roman candle fights. I had one of those, I think, on the night before the Y2K bug killed us all, which didn't actually kill us all. Anyway, thanks for joining us for the program. I know it's a holiday for some of you, so I saw a little bit of an uptick on folks that didn't have to go to work today. Fantastic. Thanks for catching us live. Otherwise, we'll catch you again tomorrow at the normal places, the normal times, 09:30 Eastern Time. And God bless you. Have a fantastic either day off or work day, depending on the case. We're going to do the same over here. We'll talk real soon. See you in the morning.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.